Hello, welcome to the recorded version of the Safer Roads Southeast presentation regarding the Chelton, Jetwing, and Hancock projects given on the 30th of June, 2020. Hello, and welcome to this meeting. Thank you for spending a valuable part of your day to learn more about these projects. My name is Kate Brady, and I'm the bicycle planner for the City of Colorado Springs. The bicycle program is in the Traffic Engineering Division of Public Works. A key goal of traffic engineering is getting people where they want to go safely and efficiently with minimal opportunities for mistakes, and the bicycle program focuses on the bicycle part of that. The bicycle program has dedicated funds totaling approximately $500,000 a year. This money can only be used for the bicycle program, so it's not a question of potholes versus bike lanes, but where do we put the bike lanes and how do we use our funds, our limited resources? And we're here to discuss those questions relative to 3 roads in Southeast Colorado Springs. First of all, why does the city concern ourselves with bicycles? They're toys. Well, they're toys, but they're also transportation. The city has a key role in providing a variety of transportation options for people to get around, whether that's by car, by foot, by bike, or by public transportation. While the city wants to provide people with a choice in how they get around, we also need to remember that not everyone has a choice. There are people who can't or won't drive for health or economic reasons, or they choose not to drive. Regardless, they still need to get around safely. In this case, the students in the photograph are clearly too young to drive legally, but they still have places that they want to go. So how do we plan for bikes? We want projects to be consistent with and to honor plans that have come before this, both at the city level, like the Plan COS Comprehensive Plan and the Bike Master Plan, but also the plans that are more specific to this area of the city. Those would include the ULI Healthy Places Report, the Trust for Public Lands planning efforts in Panorama Park, the Academy Boulevard Corridor Great Streets Plan, and the RISE Coalition Action Plan. We're also seeking to collaborate with important neighborhood organizations and leadership, including the RISE Coalition, the Solid Rock Christian Center and CDC, the El Paso County Public Health Department, Kono, and Councilwoman Avila. All of these have been involved in this effort. Really, we're aiming to balance the goals of the city, including safety and multimodal transportation, with helping the neighborhood be the way the neighbors want it. We want you to come alongside and help us determine the direction forward. So where do we plan for bikes? Well, bikes are legal on almost all roads because the city has dedicated funds for bike infrastructure and because the city strives to use resources cost effectively. We want to be strategic about where we focus attention on bike infrastructure. Many people feel very safe already biking in their neighborhoods, but many of the places they might want to go are on bigger roadways. We look at balancing the safety of everyone with offering access to the places people want to go using the travel mode they want to use. A few years ago, we developed a bicycle master plan to look in part at where we should focus our resources on bicycle infrastructure to achieve a basic network to get people around. As you can see from this image from a public meeting, a good portion of it was based on the maps of the city. Next. Yeah. So this is an image of what came out of that mapping exercise, which we call our Vision Network Map. In Southeast Colorado Springs, this map-based exercise identified corridors to build a connected network to get bicyclists to, around, and through Southeast Colorado Springs. Some of these exist already, but many are intended for future build-out. In this project, these projects in particular are proposing infrastructure to continue existing bike lanes to complete connections. We're looking at the segments of Chelton Road from Mallard Drive to Hancock Expressway, Hancock Expressway from Chelton Road to Resnick, and Jetwing Drive from Hancock Expressway to Academy Boulevard. You can see from this image of the vision map, that's where these roadways are. The road segments identified in red are Chelton, in purple are Hancock, and in dark green is Jetwing. So the image, the proposed projects provide connections to bike lanes and trails. On the left, you can see a map with the current bike lanes on Southeast Colorado Springs streets. The map shows roads that are disjointed or don't provide a continuous connection. The map on the right shows how adding the proposed bike lanes will tie existing bike lanes into a connected network of on-street bike facilities. In particular, note the access that this provides to the Sand Creek Trail. These proposed projects also provide connections to transit routes and commercial areas, parks, and schools. The image to the left shows how the proposed bike lanes can help people get to neighborhood transit routes, Route 1 and Route 22, which both run on Chelton. And this extends the first and last mile of transit. The image on the right shows how the proposed bike lanes connect to commercial areas with shopping and employment opportunities, shown in red, parks shown in green, and schools in blue. And please note in particular Panorama Park and Mission Trace, both of which have had lots of exciting activities happening around them. These bike lanes also provide connections to destinations. The destinations pinned in blue include the Sand Creek Library, Deerfield Hills Community Center, the Tut Boys and Girls Club of the Pikes Peak region, and the Southeast Armed Services Y. The purple pins designate area places of worship. These things are all connected by a network of existing bike lanes and then including the proposed bike lanes. Based on all the places connected by these roadways, this project addresses the community need for connections and we feel also provides more neighborhood-friendly streets. Now, while the Bike Master Plan identified roads, corridors really, it did not specify how bikes were to be accommodated, what the infrastructure would look like, nor when the projects would occur. These questions were intended to be answered later through additional public input and more planning and analysis efforts led by city staff, which is why we're here today. While there are a number of options of types of bike infrastructure in general, for these roadways, two different ways have been identified to include people on bikes safely. One would be a side path, which is a wider sidewalk on one side of the road, and the other would be through roadway traffic calming, which is changing the space on the road to accommodate more types of users. This is an image of the side path on Drennan Road. You can see that on the right side, which is the south side of the roadway. It's like a trail, but it's right next to the road proper. I wanted to point out that although the trail is on the right side of the road in this image, the homes and the destinations are all on the left side. There are benefits and disadvantages to the side path approach. One clear benefit is that users are separated from traffic in both the greater sense of security for people on bike or on foot, and that the installation does not affect traffic patterns. Now, we don't tend to retrofit a side path on both sides of the roadway, so it really best serves the side of the road it's on, which we saw on the image from Drennan. This is an issue, especially on roads where traffic signals or stop signs are far apart, or the roadway is wide and there are lots of lanes to cross. And side paths are not cost-effective to retrofit. We've not yet scoped out how much a side path would cost, but I do know that we recently wrote a grant application that estimated $50,000 for 500 feet of trail, and that's when we owned the property already. The projects we're discussing today are a little over 4 miles total, so this could well be a several $million project. That cost would add time to implementation as well, since we don't have a ready source of that kind of money in the budget at this point. It also fails to change driver behavior, which we'll get into in a moment. The other option is the traffic calming or repurposing a roadway. And this is an image of Jetwing, where the outside travel lane has already been reconfigured to add on-street bike lanes. Again, this is the other option on these roadways. This is not a new idea in this area, as you can see from this image of students riding on similarly designed bike lanes at the intersection of, near the intersection of Asterzon and Jetwing. These are images of road sections of the existing and the proposed. So the top image is what these roadways generally look like currently. 2 travel lanes in each direction and then a center turn lane with no parking along the curb line. The change that we are proposing from 5 lanes to 3 would take that outside lane and make a buffered bike lane, which adds space between the car lane and the bike lane. So the benefits of the roadway traffic calming or repurposing approach. Benefits for people on bikes include that the infrastructure serves destinations and people who live on both sides of the road. And it provides a dedicated space with a buffer, which allows a person on a bike to wobble, which happens sometimes, or a driver to stray over the line, which also happens sometimes. But having that buffer, that extra space, ups the odds that nothing bad would happen in either of those situations, that no one would get hurt. For other users, or even all users, the roadway becomes a little less of a barrier. It's easier to cross. There's more space between pedestrians and vehicles. It's also safer with less severe crashes and lower speeds. We've seen lower speeds on other similar projects, and this sort of traffic calming provides a way to reinforce driver good behavior without resorting to enforcement. It's also cost-effective compared to the Sidepath option. Because this project would only involve painting stripes on the roadway, most of this project could be accomplished with less than $100,000, which granted is a lot of money, but it's substantially less than the millions that the Sidepath might cost. To put this into context, it costs about $100,000 to pave 1 lane mile of roadway. So Chelton is a 5-lane road, and since Chelton is a 5-lane road, it cost $500,000 to pave 1 lane of Chelton when Chelton was paved last year. So by the standards of other public works projects, this is cost effective. That also means it would be easier to find bike program budget to install that sooner. Here's an image of people on bikes on a repurposed roadway. You can see that space allotted between them and the vehicles that helps to account for mistakes made on either side. I consider it more of a margin for error. Next. Okay. Of course, there are disadvantages to roadway traffic calming as well, but the costs of that are unique to every roadway and come down to how many people are driving or parking on it and how many are expected to do so in the future. The balance of costs versus benefits depends on how much time or congestion is added to the traveling public. But to know that, we need to study those questions in greater detail. This is an image of the decision-making process that we go through in a situation like this. So the first step on here is data analysis, and that's studying the roadways. We've already completed this step essentially completed it by contracting with the independent engineering firm WSP. They collected data and modeled possible outcomes. Although we're currently at the second public engagement step, what we're doing right now, I wanted to walk you through the analysis first. What data did the consultants collect on our behalf in this project? They looked at current traffic volumes, so how many vehicles are on the roadway right now, current vehicle classifications, are there a lot of large trucks, what are the current speeds that people are going, 5 years of crash history, and then they were able to use the current traffic volumes and estimated growth to estimate traffic volumes 25 years into the future for 2045. All of this will be available on our website shortly. What they learned. Again, the entire traffic study will be posted on the website, but there are a few key points here. First off, they discovered that the traffic volumes on these roadways were lower than or comparable to other roads that have been similarly repurposed in the city of Colorado Springs. They also learned that some people are driving really fast on Chelton. They collected speed data in a number of different locations, so it depended on the location, but up to half of vehicles are driving 15 miles per hour or more over the speed limit on Chelton, and up to 3/4 of the vehicles are driving 10 miles per hour over. This is an image of showing that the faster a vehicle is traveling, the more damage fatality rate is done to a pedestrian that gets hit by that car. So you can see that driving at 50 plus miles per hour, almost all of the pedestrians that get struck in that situation are killed. And this is why speeding on our roadways concerns us. It's not just a matter of people driving where they need to go as fast as possible. It's a question of whether these roadways in our city should feel like, and in your neighborhood, should feel like highways or neighborhood streets, and whether pets and school children are safe along that roadway. One of traffic engineering's goals is to reduce the risk of harm of people speeding in our neighborhoods. I want to be clear that this is a problem that we're trying to tackle across our city, not just in the Southeast. And some of the speeding issues here and elsewhere are because these roadways were built too big for the amount of traffic they carry. This is why we're looking at changing how big they are in the first place. And one happy outcome that we've discovered in a similar project on Cascade Avenue north of downtown is that although travel times, how long it took for people to get from one end of the roadway to the other, were on average about the same before and after, the number of people who were able to speed 10 or 15 miles per hour over the speed limit dropped from about 40% to closer to 8%. When you only have one lane of traffic in each direction, people who want to go really fast don't always have the opportunity to pass slower vehicles. This is an image of children riding in those bike lanes on Cascade Avenue, where their family might not have felt as comfortable letting them ride when it was a 4-lane road, so before the changes. So these are the questions that our engineering consultants asked. What would traffic conditions look like now and in 2045 on those roads, both as they exist now as 5 or 6 lane roadways, and if we were to limit them to 3 lanes or 4 in the case of Hancock? How do intersections function? How much delay will be introduced at the intersections? And how long will it take to travel from one end to the other? So this is a diagram of the analysis process that the consulting firm used. The engineers used a computer model. Their inputs included current and future volumes, current number of lanes, and then the proposed number of lanes. So the geometry before and then proposed. The model gives estimates of how the intersections both with and without traffic signals will work under both configurations, and then the expected change in travel time for the entire Chelton corridor. The results of the analysis were more complicated for the segment of Chelton north of the Sand Creek Trail, so we'll be covering that in greater detail at the next online meeting. But we can share with you the results of the other segments and the consultants' recommendations there. For Hancock Expressway, the section from Chelton Road to Resnick Drive, they found that the intersections work about the same with fewer lanes now and in 2045, and that the travel times as well were about the same with fewer lanes, both now and in 25 years. They found very similar for Jetwing Drive from Hancock Expressway to Academy Boulevard, namely that the intersections work roughly the same with 3 lanes now and in 2045, that the travel times are about the same with 3 lanes now and in 2045 as well. And this seems counterintuitive, but it's about like rolling marbles down a bowling lane. You can narrow the bowling lane, but because there's so much space initially, you can still get a lot of marbles through on even a narrower lane. For the consultants found on Chelton Road on the south portion from Sand Creek Trail to Hancock Expressway, again, that the intersections work about the same with 3 lanes, now and in 2045. And the travel times as well are about the same with 3 lanes now and in 2045. And any change to the travel time is due not to expected or introduced delays at intersection, but due to the slower speeds that we would get about 5 miles per hour lower speeds through on average through there. So the consultant's conclusion after that is that for the segments on Jetwing Drive and Hancock Expressway and the segment of Chelton south of Sand Creek Trail, repurposing a portion of the roadway would be the most cost-effective way to accommodate bicycles on the corridors and would have minimal negative impact on vehicular traffic. The segment of Chelton between Mallard Drive and Sand Creek Trail is a little more challenging because of the busy intersections with Fountain and Academy Boulevards, but we do have some options for this segment of the roadway. We'll be discussing those options in greater detail at the next online public meeting. Again, we're back to the diagram of the decision-making process, and now we're at the public engagement piece where we're asking for public feedback. We want to hear how you, the public, feels about what we've presented here today. We're now at a stage of looking to you to provide input on what would make the most sense for the community. In making a final decision, the Traffic Engineering Division will take the engineering data and the public feedback into consideration for the final decision. So what do you think of the proposal? Do you think it's consistent with the neighborhood's values and needs? So our next step, we will have, this is irrelevant to the recorded presentation, but this presentation in English will be posted to the website shortly, and we already have the PowerPoint in English and Spanish on our website. Between June 30th and July 7th, we will have a public online survey open, and we encourage everyone to use that survey to provide feedback and input on this project. And then July 14th at 6 p.m. will be our next online digital meeting, and we intend to present at that point the results of the survey and the options that have been and the conclusions that have been derived for Chelton between Mallard Drive and sorry, this says Jetwing, but that's actually the Sand Creek Trail. So any questions, you can go to coloradosprings.gov/SaferRoadsSoutheast, where we will have an FAQ and access to that survey data. Or you can feel free to call or email me at the information below, 719-385-5437, or my email, which is kate.brady@coloradosprings.gov. Thank you very much, and this concludes our recording of the presentation.